Ethan sat in the dimly lit bar on the edge of the galaxy. He had been hired for a mission, one that seemed simple enough at least. That's what the employer had told him.
Ow.
But there was something different about this job. The moment he stepped into the bar, every person there gave him a strange look. The whispering voices in the corner stopped as he entered, and everyone seemed to know exactly who he was. He was used to being watched, but today it felt different. The job was clear. He was to meet with a woman named Zara. That was all the information he had been given. No backstory, no details. Just her name, and the fact that she was dangerous. He had worked with dangerous people before. It was a part of the job. But this time, something didn't sit right. The employer had stressed how careful he had to be, how unpredictable Zara could be. But that only made Ethan more curious. Who was this woman who had the entire galaxy on edge? Ethan walked to the counter and ordered a drink. His mind raced with questions. The bartender, a burly alien with 4 arms, slid the drink to him without a word. Ethan took a sip, scanning the room for any signs of danger. His eyes landed on a figure sitting alone at the far corner. She was a woman, but there was something about her that made her stand out even in a crowded bar. Her presence was undeniable. She had long, dark hair that cascaded down her back like a river of night. Her skin was a pale, almost silver color, and her eyes were the most striking feature of all. They seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, an unnatural shimmer that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. But it was her expression that caught his attention the most. She wasn't looking at anyone. She wasn't talking to anyone. She just sat there, staring ahead with an air of quiet confidence. He knew it was her. Zara. Ethan stood up slowly, his heart beating faster than usual. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew him in, but he knew he had to keep his distance. The last thing he wanted was to get involved with someone like her. But curiosity was a powerful force, and it pushed him forward. As he walked toward her, he noticed the silence that followed him. It was as if everyone in the room knew exactly who she was, and they were waiting to see how he would handle the situation. Ethan didn't care about the stares or the whispers. He had a job to do. When he reached her table, Zara finally looked up at him. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, Ethan forgot to breathe. Her gaze was intense, as if she could see straight through him. "I was wondering when you would come," she said, her voice smooth and calm, almost too calm for someone with the reputation she had. Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say. "I was told to meet you," he finally said. Zara's lips curled into a small smile. "Of course you were," she replied, her voice full of quiet amusement. "Sit." Ethan took a seat across from her, keeping a careful distance. Had been warned. "After all, why are you here?" Zara asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What is it that you want from me?" Ethan could tell there was more to this than just the mission. There was something personal about the way she spoke, like she was testing him. He leaned back in his chair, trying to seem as relaxed as possible. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "I was just hired to bring you in. That's all." Zara studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them, and Ethan began to feel like he was under a microscope. She wasn't just dangerous. There was a quiet power about her that he couldn't ignore. "You're lying," she said softly. "You came here for something else." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had been caught. There was no way around it. He hadn't come for her. But something in him had been drawn to her from the moment he stepped into the bar. He had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Zara, the deadly alien woman with unimaginable power. She was dangerous, yes, but more than that, she was a mystery. And Ethan had always been the type to solve mysteries. He couldn't admit that to her, though. Instead, he shrugged. "Maybe I am," he said with a small smile, trying to play it. "Cool, but it doesn't change anything. I'm here to do a job." Zara's eyes softened, and for a brief second, Ethan saw a flicker of something behind her icy exterior. Was it sadness? Regret? He couldn't tell. "You think you can just walk into my life and leave when you're done?" Zara asked, her voice colder now. "You don't know who I am. You don't know what I'm capable of. And yet you still came." Ethan's stomach tightened. The warning had been clear. She was dangerous. But he hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to be so commanding. "I don't fear you," he said, his voice steady. "I don't fear anyone." Zara's lips twitched again, and for a moment she almost seemed amused. "You should," she said softly. "But that's what makes you different. And that's why you're here." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. What she meant. But he had a feeling that his life would never be the same after this meeting. He had been warned about Zara, but no one had told him that she might be his. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake. Sitting across from Zara in that quiet, dimly lit corner of the bar, he was no longer sure what to expect from her. She was more than the dangerous woman he had been warned about. There was something deeper, something hidden beneath her cold, powerful exterior. And now he couldn't stop thinking about it. Zara had barely spoken since he arrived. But the weight of her gaze was enough to make Ethan uncomfortable. Every word she had said lingered in his mind. "You don't know what I'm capable of." Her voice had been so calm, so sure. It was almost as if she knew something he'd. Ethan shifted in his seat, trying to break the silence. He had to keep his cool. He had a job to do. But every time he tried to focus on the mission, his mind wandered back to Zara. Her eyes, the way she carried herself. The strange feeling she stirred inside him. It was distracting. He had dealt with dangerous people before, but none like her. None that made him question everything. Finally, Zara spoke again. Her voice was soft, but filled with an undeniable authority. "You're wondering why I'm so dangerous, aren't you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as if she could read his thoughts. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around the bar, as no one was watching them anymore, but the tension in the air hadn't lifted. It was as if everyone there knew. Better than to intrude on whatever was unfolding between him and Zara, he looked back at her, the weight of her question settling in. "You're not just dangerous because of your abilities," he said, carefully choosing his words. "There's something else about you, something I don't understand." Zara smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a knowing smile. She seemed to enjoy keeping him on edge, testing him with her silence, her presence. "You're smarter than you look," she said, but still not quite there. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady, piercing. "I am not just dangerous because of what I can do with my powers," she continued, her tone growing more serious. "I am dangerous because of who I am, what I am." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. From hers, he wanted to know more, to understand why Zara made him feel this way. Something in the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, told him that there was more to her than he could even begin to guess. "I don't follow, Ethan," admitted, his voice betraying his confusion. Zara took a deep breath, her eyes softening just for a moment. She seemed to hesitate, as though considering how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. "I am the last of an ancient race, Ethan. My people were once rulers of this galaxy, with powers no one could imagine. But we were hunted, killed by those who feared us." Ethan blinked in surprise. He had heard of many alien races, some with incredible powers, but nothing like what Zara was describing. She spoke of her people as though they had been gods, and yet she was the last one left. "Your people were wiped out?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. He didn't want to sound disrespectful, but it was hard to believe. Zara was too powerful, too strong, to have come from a race that had been destroyed. Zara nodded slowly. "Yes, the last of my kind was hunted to extinction. The universe can't stand powerful beings like us. So they destroyed us, erased us from history, and now I am the last. The last one with the power to change everything." Ethan swallowed hard. He could see the pain behind her words. She wasn't just a cold, dangerous woman. She was a survivor, someone who had lived through unimaginable loss. Yet there was something in her voice, something he couldn't quite understand. It was as though Zara wasn't just angry about what happened to her people. She was resigned to it, as if she had accepted that her destiny was already set in motion. "I thought you were dangerous because of your skills," Ethan said, trying to make sense of it all. But you're telling me it's more than that. It's who you are. Zara nodded again, her gaze intense. Yes, it's who I am. My bloodline carries the legacy of my people's power, and it's been passed down to me. The abilities I have, the strength I possess, they are a part of who I am. But the galaxy doesn't see it that way. They see me as a threat, and they want to control me, or destroy me. Ethan took a deep breath. He hadn't expected this. This wasn't just about a dangerous woman with extraordinary powers. This was about an entire race's legacy. It's about Zara carrying the weight of her ancestors' fate on her shoulders. But why does it matter to me? He asked, his voice quieter now. I'm just a hired gun. I'm not involved in whatever war you're fighting. Zara's lips twisted into a faint smile. Oh, but you are. You just don't know it yet. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what she meant, but the way she said it, the way her eyes locked onto his, made him believe she wasn't lying. She knew something he didn't. For the first time, Ethan realized that he hadn't just walked into a job. He'd walked into something far bigger, something that was going to change his life forever. And in that moment, he realized that Zara was no ordinary woman. She was the key to a future he hadn't even imagined. I don't understand, Ethan said, his voice low. But I will. I'll figure it out. Zara's smile deepened, and for the first time since meeting her, she looked almost pleased. I know you will, Ethan, she said softly, but be careful. There are others who will stop at nothing to control me. And you will have to choose your side. As she finished speaking, a faint noise echoed from the entrance of the bar. Ethan turned, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But when he looked back, Zara was already standing, her eyes scanning the room. The real danger was just... The room fell silent as Zara and Ethan stood facing the entrance. His hand instinctively moved to his weapon, but Zara's sharp eyes told him to stay still. She didn't reach for her weapon, her posture calm and confident. She had seen danger before, far more serious than the usual threats Ethan dealt with. They're here, Zara whispered, her voice low and almost expectant. She knew who they were without having to look. Ethan wasn't sure what to do. His mind raced. He was trained to handle threats, but he wasn't prepared for whatever was about to happen. He had come here on a simple mission, yet now he was caught in a web of secrets and power he couldn't escape from. Before he could react, the door swung open, and 3 armed men stepped in. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the room. Ethan could feel the tension in the air, thick like a storm before the rain. Zara didn't move, her eyes locking on to the leader of the group. She didn't seem afraid, but Ethan could sense the weight of history between them. The man at the front was tall, with a face hardened by years of battle. His eyes were cold, calculating. We've come for her, the man said, his voice rough. Ethan could see that he wasn't just talking about capturing Zara, he was talking about something more dangerous. This wasn't just a typical mission, this was something deeper, and he was getting pulled into it whether he liked it or not. Zara stood tall, unfazed. You should leave, she said quietly. You're not prepared for what's coming. What? Man laughed, but it was a hollow sound, one filled with uncertainty. We're prepared for anything, Zara. But there was a brief hesitation in his eyes, something that Ethan noticed. The man might have had confidence, but he didn't have the calm of someone who was truly in control. The truth was, Zara wasn't just another target. She was a weapon, and everyone around her seemed to know it. I said leave, Zara repeated, her voice colder this time. She stepped forward, her presence growing stronger with every step. The leader's expression faltered for a second before he gestured to his men. Take her. But before they could make a move, Ethan stepped forward, his hand firmly gripping his weapon. Not so fast, he said, his voice steady. Zara looked at him, a slight flicker of surprise in her eyes. Ethan wasn't a hero. He wasn't someone who threw himself into danger without thinking. But something about Zara had stirred a protective instinct in him, something he hadn't felt in years. The leader of the group shot Ethan a look of disgust, as if he were a minor inconvenience. Move aside, mercenary. This doesn't concern you. But Ethan didn't move. Couldn't. There was something in Zara's eyes, something he couldn't explain that made him stand firm. "I think it does," he said. For a moment, there was a stillness in the room, the air thick with unspoken words. Zara's gaze softened, and she gave Ethan the slightest nod, as if she was silently acknowledging the unexpected turn of events. Without warning, the man charged forward, his hands raised to grab Zara. But in an instant, Zara moved, faster than Ethan could see. She grabbed his wrist and twisted it, sending him crashing into one of his own men. The room erupted in chaos as Zara fought back with swift, precise movements. Ethan stood frozen, unsure whether he should help or just watch. The way Zara moved, the way she controlled the fight, it was like watching a force of nature. She wasn't just a skilled fighter, she was something else. There was power in every movement, a quiet strength that left Ethan in awe. The leader of the group managed to get back on his feet, his eyes now filled with fear. He didn't expect Zara to be this strong. He had thought that capturing her would be easy, but now he saw the mistake he'd made. She wasn't just dangerous, she was unstoppable. "You don't know what you're dealing with," Zara said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "You were never meant to win this fight." The remaining two men hesitated, looking to their leader for guidance. But the leader's face had gone pale. He knew they were outmatched. This wasn't just a fight they could win. This was the beginning of something bigger, something he wasn't prepared for. Zara let out a sharp breath and stepped back, her hands raised to show she wasn't going to continue fighting. "I don't want to kill you," she said quietly. "But if you don't leave, I will." Ethan could see the fear in the men's eyes. They didn't want to be the ones to push her further. The leader hesitated for a moment longer, then signaled to his men to retreat. They weren't going to win this fight. Without a word, the group backed out of the bar, leaving Zara and Ethan standing in the silence that followed. The tension in the room slowly faded, but Ethan still felt the weight of what had just happened. Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "That was unexpected," she said, her voice calm once more. "You stood your ground." Ethan didn't know how to respond. He had acted without thinking. But now he couldn't ignore the feeling that had been growing inside him since he first met Zara. There was something about hers, something powerful that drew him in, made him feel like he had to protect her. "I didn't want them to take you," Ethan said, his voice quieter now. "You're not just another mission to me." Zara looked at him with an unreadable expression. For a moment there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that felt almost like trust. "Maybe you're not just a mercenary after all," Zara said softly. "Maybe you have a purpose here." Ethan didn't know what to say. All he knew was that his life had just changed forever. He'd come here for a simple job, but now he was caught in something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. The more time he spent with Zara, the more he realized that he wasn't just here to protect her. He was here to help her change the course of history, and in that moment, he felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just here because of a job, he was here because he was meant to be. Somehow his fate was tied to Ethan could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. The fight with the mercenaries had been intense, but the real challenge was just beginning. As he stood in the quiet aftermath, the only sound was the distant hum of the bar's lights. Zara had dealt with the intruders easily, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get even more complicated. He looked at her, still trying to understand what had just happened. Zara wasn't just powerful, she was untouchable, a force of nature, and he had been pulled into her world. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but somehow, he knew he couldn't walk away. "Not now?" Zara seemed to sense his unease. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You're asking questions, Ethan," she said, her voice low. "But you're afraid of the answers." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. How could she? No. He hadn't said a word, yet somehow, she always seemed to know exactly what he was thinking. He wanted to ask her what was really going on, what she wasn't telling him. But the words stuck in his throat. "I don't understand any of this," Ethan admitted, finally breaking the silence. "You're not just some dangerous woman. You're not just a mission. There's something bigger happening, and I'm a part of it. I just don't know why." Zara took a deep breath and stepped closer. "That's because you were meant to be," she said, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable intensity. You've been a part of this since the moment you were born, Ethan. His mind raced. What do you mean? How could I? She interrupted him, shaking her head slightly. I know you don't believe it. I didn't believe it at first either, but I'm here, and you're here, and that's not a coincidence. Ethan's confusion deepened. He had always been just a pilot, just a mercenary. His life had been simple. Take the job, do the work, and leave. But now, every step he took seemed to lead him deeper into a world he didn't understand. Who are you, Zara? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. And what is this prophecy you keep talking about? Zara sighed, her gaze turning distant. I am the last of an ancient race. My people were once rulers of this galaxy, but they were destroyed. My bloodline holds power, power that the galaxy fears. Ethan's mind reeled at her words. Your people were rulers. He couldn't even begin to wrap his head around it. Zara didn't look like a ruler. She looked like someone who had been through hell and survived, someone who had been forced to carry the weight of a broken past. She nodded, her eyes darkening with the weight of her memories. Yes, we were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but fear is a dangerous thing. Those who fear you will do anything to destroy you. That's what happened to my people. Ethan wanted to say something to comfort her, but the words didn't come. He didn't know what to say. Instead, he just listened as Zara continued. My people were wiped out, she said softly. Not. But before they died, they left behind a prophecy. A prophecy that I would be the last, the one who would either bring about the galaxy's destruction or save it. And now, you're a part of it, whether you like it or not. Ethan's stomach twisted. Me. I'm just a mercenary. I'm not part of anything like that. You've got the wrong person. Zara stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. You don't understand. You were chosen, Ethan. You've always been part of this. Your fate was tied to mine long before we ever met. Ethan shook his head, unable to accept what she was saying. It felt too impossible, but how? Why? Zara's expression softened, her voice almost a whisper. Because you were born into the same bloodline. You were the one who was meant to stand beside me, to help me fulfill the prophecy. The words hit Ethan like a blow to the chest. He felt dizzy, like the ground was slipping out from under him. Couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. This couldn't be true. It was too much. He was just a pilot. He was just trying to survive. How could he possibly be part of something like this? No, I'm not, Ethan said, his voice shaking. I'm nothing like you. Zara stepped back, her eyes filled with something that might have been pity. You don't see it yet, but you will. You have no choice, Ethan. The galaxy has already chosen you. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to fight against what she was saying, but something inside him told him she was right. There was no turning back. He couldn't deny the pull he felt when he was with her, the strange connection that seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. He had been drawn to her for a reason, and that reason was far bigger than he could comprehend. Why didn't you tell me this before? Ethan asked, his voice low. Zara hesitated for a moment, her gaze turning inward. Because I didn't want you to be part of it, she admitted. I didn't want you to get caught up in this. You deserve more than this. Ethan shook his head. I don't know if I can do this, Zara. I'm just a guy trying to make it through another day. I didn't ask for any of this. Zara looked at him with a mixture of sadness and determination. I know, but sometimes fate doesn't ask. It just happens. There was a long silence between them, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Ethan felt like everything he had ever known was slipping away. But at the same time, he felt something new growing inside him, a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny. I don't know what the future holds, Ethan said finally, his voice steady. But if I'm part of this, then I'll stand by you. I'll help you. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Zara's expression softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of something like hope in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. And for the first time, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was meant. Ethan sat at the edge of the table, staring at the map spread out in front of him. The lines and symbols seemed meaningless, a jumble of shapes and colors. Yet he knew that everything about this mission, about his life now, was tied to this map. It was a map of the galaxy, but it was also a map of his future, a future he hadn't asked for, but one that had already been set in motion. Zara was standing by the window, her eyes distant as she gazed out at the stars. The galaxy seemed so peaceful from here, yet Ethan knew that peace was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the forces that were closing in on them. They weren't just dealing with mercenaries anymore. They were facing something far bigger, something that could change the fate of the galaxy itself. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, his voice breaking the silence. He had been quiet for so long, trying to process everything Zara had told him. The prophecy, his role in it, the galaxy's fears. It was too much to take in. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, he couldn't turn back. Zara turned slowly, her gaze meeting his. There was a softness in her eyes, but there was also something harder, something more focused. She had been through so much, and now she was asking Ethan to be a part of it, to be part of her destiny. "We fight," she said simply. "We fight for what's left of my people, for the future of this galaxy. But you have to make a choice, Ethan. You can't stand in the middle forever." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A choice? What did she mean by that? He had already chosen, hadn't he? He was here with her, standing beside her. But the weight of her words made him hesitate. "I don't understand," he said, feeling a bit lost. "What do you mean a choice?" Zara took a step closer to him, her expression serious. "You can choose to leave, Ethan. You can walk away from this, from me, and go back to your life. No one will blame you. You've already done more than anyone expected." Ethan's chest tightened. Couldn't imagine leaving now, not after everything they had been through together. But the idea of walking away, of leaving this mission behind, was tempting. Life had always been simple. Do the job, collect the payment, and move on. But now, everything had changed. Zara had opened up a world of possibilities, a world of danger, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for all of it. "I don't want to leave," Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to walk away. But I'm not like you, Zara. I don't have the power you do. I don't have your strength, your knowledge. I'm just a pilot, a mercenary." Zara reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, comforting. "You don't need to be like me. You don't need to have my strength. You have something else, Ethan. You have your heart. And that's what matters." Ethan met her gaze, his chest tightening. Her words struck a chord with him. He had never thought of himself as someone special, someone destined for greatness. The way Zara saw him, the way she believed in him, made him question everything he had known about himself. "So what's the choice?" Ethan asked, his voice steadier now. Zara's eyes darkened, and she looked away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "The galaxy is divided, Ethan. There are forces that want to control me, that want to use me for their own gain. There are those who fear what I can do, what I could become. But there are also those who want to see me destroyed, to see my bloodline erased for good." Ethan frowned, his mind racing. "And you want me to help you stop them?" Zara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes. But it's more than that. I need you to fight with me, to fight for what's left of my people. But I can't do it alone. You're the one who can help me see this through. You're the one who can help me change the course of history." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Ethan wasn't sure if he was ready for the responsibility she was asking of him. He'd always been someone who followed orders, someone who stayed in the background. But now he was being asked to stand at the forefront, to make a difference in a fight that could determine the future of the galaxy. "Don't know if I'm ready for this," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with doubt. "I've never fought for something bigger than myself." Zara's expression softened, and she took a step closer. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing. Willing to stand by me, willing to fight for what's right." Ethan looked into her eyes, searching for something, anything, that could give him the answers he needed. What if he failed? What if he couldn't live up to her expectations? What if he wasn't enough? But as he looked at her, he saw something in her eyes that gave him the courage to move forward. Zara wasn't asking him to be perfect. She wasn't asking him to have all the answers. She was asking him to stand by her side, to face whatever came next together. "I'll fight," Ethan said, his voice firm. I'll stand with you, Zara. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Zara smiled, a look of relief crossing her face. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "I knew you would." The moment was brief, but in that moment Ethan knew. He had made the right choice. He had chosen to stand with Zara, to fight for the future of the galaxy, to fight for something bigger than himself. The road ahead would be difficult, but he no longer felt afraid. He knew that with Zara by his side, they could face anything. As they looked at the map once more, the stars beyond the window seemed to shimmer with possibilities. The galaxy was waiting for them, and their journey was just... The tension in the air was thick as Zara and Ethan stood at the edge of the battlefield. The stars above them twinkled coldly, casting a faint light over the vast, desolate land. This was the place where it all would happen, the final confrontation. The forces that had hunted Zara, that had destroyed her people, were closing in, and they would stop at nothing to erase her from existence. Ethan felt the weight of the decision he had made. Standing here beside Zara, he realized how far he had come. He had been a simple mercenary before this, just a man who did jobs for money. But now, he was part of something far bigger. He was fighting not just for his survival, but for the survival of a people, a legacy, a future that could change everything. Zara stood beside him, her face set in a calm, determined expression. She was no longer the woman he had first met in the bar, the cold, distant figure. Now she was something else, someone who carried the weight of an entire galaxy on her shoulders. Ethan could see it in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the future. For the chance to rebuild what had been destroyed. "They're coming," Zara said, her voice steady, as if the pressure of the moment didn't affect her at all. She scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes catching movement in the distance. Ethan glanced in the same direction. A large fleet of enemy ships was approaching, their dark silhouettes cutting through the stars like predators on the hunt. These were the forces that wanted to see Zara dead, that wanted to destroy everything she represented. They had been chasing her for years, and now they were about to finish what they had started. But this time, Zara wasn't alone. This time, she had Ethan by her side. He could feel the nervous tension in his chest. He wasn't a soldier, was just a man who had stumbled into this battle, not knowing what was really at stake. But now, as he stood here with Zara, he knew he couldn't back down. Not now. Not when everything depended on them. "We have to do this," Zara said, her voice a low whisper. "We have to fight, Ethan. There's no turning back now." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight with determination. "I'm with you, Zara, all the way." They turned to face the battlefield together, ready to confront the enemy. The wind stirred around them, carrying the scent of dust and the promise of conflict. It was the calm before the storm, and Ethan could feel the weight of destiny pressing. On him, he was no longer just a bystander. He was part of the fight, part of the battle that would decide the future. The first shots rang out across the battlefield, a thunderous roar that echoed through the silence of space. The enemy ships launched their assault, firing at the ground, in an attempt to break through the defenses that Zara and Ethan had set up. But they weren't just fighting with weapons, they were fighting with purpose. And that made all the difference. Zara's powers surged to life. Ethan had seen her abilities before, but nothing like this. As the enemy fired upon them, she raised her hand and a pulse of energy exploded from her fingers, sending shock waves through the air. The enemy ships shuddered, some of them spiraling out of control as the force of her power ripped through their shields. Ethan couldn't believe his eyes. This wasn't just a fight. This was something far bigger, something far more dangerous. Zara was not just a survivor. She was a force to be reckoned with, a being capable of changing the very fabric of reality. But the enemy wasn't giving up easily. They regrouped quickly, launching another wave of attacks. Ethan grabbed his weapon, ready to fight beside Zara. He wasn't as powerful as she was, but he had his own strength, his determination, his willingness to stand by her no matter what. The battle raged on. Ethan fought with everything he had, covering Zara as she focused her powers on the enemy. He was amazed by her strength, by the way she seemed to command the battlefield with ease. But he also saw the strain in her eyes. This wasn't just a physical battle. It was an emotional one. Zara was carrying the weight of her people's fate, and that was a burden no one should have to bear alone. As the battle wore on, Ethan felt a new sense of clarity. He wasn't just standing by Zara because of some sense of duty. He was standing by her because he believed in her. He believed in what she was fighting for. He believed in the chance to rebuild what had been lost. And he wasn't going to let her fight this battle alone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the tide began to turn. The enemy forces were retreating, their ships damaged and scattered. Zara's powers had overwhelmed them, and the force of her will had shattered their resolve. The battlefield was littered with debris, but it was clear that they had won. Ethan stood beside Zara, panting from the exertion. He felt a sense of relief wash over him, but it was mixed with exhaustion. He had never fought like this before, never faced an enemy that was so determined to destroy everything he cared about. But now, as the dust settled and the enemy retreated, he realized something. This was just the beginning. Zara turned to him, her face tired but triumphant. There was a quiet strength in her eyes now, something that told Ethan they had just won. A significant victory. But the war was far from over. "We did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded. "Oh, we did." But even as he said the words, he knew the battle was far from over. They had won this fight, but the war was still to come. The enemies that had been chasing Zara were not finished. And now, Zara and Ethan had to prepare for the next chapter. Of their journey, Zara looked out at the stars once more. "This isn't the end, Ethan. This is just the beginning of something much bigger." Ethan stood beside her, knowing that whatever came next, he would face it with her. Because now they were in this together. Together they could change the galaxy.